She shouldn't have said it out loud. But when Chloe looked at me in the middle of my living room and whispered, "Ryan, if I go back there tonight, I think he might actually hurt me," the words hung in the air like something fragile that could shatter if either of us breathed too hard. For a second, I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink, because Chloe Harper was the last person on earth I expected to hear something like that from. She was the girl who laughed through everything. The one who made sarcasm sound like music and turned bad days into jokes. The one who walked into rooms like the world had never given her a reason to be afraid. But the woman standing in front of me at midnight looked nothing like that girl. Her hands were shaking. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in dark streaks, and the small backpack hanging off her shoulder looked like something someone grabs when they're not sure if they'll ever be coming back. I felt something shift inside my chest, a quiet decision forming before I even understood it. Because if what she was saying was true, then tonight wasn't just about letting my best friend crash on the couch. It was about making sure she never had to walk back into that apartment alone again. The problem was, I didn't yet know how dangerous Derek Shaw really was. My name's Ryan Cole. I'm 28 years old, and until that night my life had been exactly the way I liked it. Quiet, predictable, safe. I live in a small two-bedroom apartment on the edge of Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. It's not fancy, but it works for me. The kind of place where nothing changes unless you change it yourself. The living room sofa is old leather, cracked in places from years of use. The coffee table has rings from careless mugs. The bookshelves are still packed with accounting textbooks I keep meaning to sell but never get around to. Everything about the apartment is practical, functional, calm, and I've always liked it that way. Growing up in Tacoma with parents who fought about money almost every night will do that to you. When chaos is the soundtrack of your childhood, silence becomes something you learn to protect. My job fits that life perfectly. I'm an accountant at a mid-size firm downtown. My days are spreadsheets, budgets, expense reports. Numbers that behave exactly the way they're supposed to. Numbers don't yell. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't slam doors. Most evenings I come home, cook something simple, maybe read a little, and let the quiet settle around me. Except for one thing, the apartment next door. That's where Chloe lives, or lived. Chloe Harper has been my best friend since sophomore year of high school. We met in history class back in Tacoma. Two teenagers stuck next to each other during a group project neither of us wanted to do. She made some sarcastic comment about our teacher's obsession with the Civil War, and I laughed so hard I almost got kicked out of class. That was the beginning. Chloe had always been the kind of person who filled space without trying. Loud when she laughed, sharp when she joked, and somehow able to make everyone around her feel like they were part of something. After college, we drifted for a few years. Life does that. Different cities, different jobs, different routines. Then 6 months ago, she moved to Seattle for freelance graphic design work. And somehow, by one of those coincidences that feels a little too convenient, she ended up renting the apartment right next to mine. Same layout, same building, different energy entirely. Where my apartment feels quiet and bare, Chloe's place always sounded alive. Jazz records playing through thin walls, Billie Holiday drifting through the hallway, sometimes Ella Fitzgerald, sometimes laughter while she talked on the phone, sometimes the sound of her pacing when she was working through a design idea. I never complained. Honestly, it made the building feel less empty. When Chloe moved in, she wasn't alone. She brought her boyfriend with her, Derek Shaw, tech sales guy, nice suits, expensive watch. The kind of confidence that looks impressive until you realize it's a little too rehearsed. I'd met him a handful of times, quick conversations in the hallway, a few awkward drinks when Chloe invited me over for dinner once. He wasn't openly rude, but something about him always felt slightly off. Like he was performing the role of good boyfriend instead of actually being one. Still, Chloe seemed happy, and I'd learned a long time ago that sometimes the best thing you can do for a friend is trust their choices, so I stayed out of it, until the night everything changed. That Saturday had started like any other. Rain tapping softly against the windows. my laptop open on the desk in the spare room I use as an office. I was halfway through reviewing an audit report for a client when something unusual caught my attention. Silence. Not normal silence. Heavy silence. Because usually by that hour there would be music drifting through the wall from Chloe's apartment. But that night, nothing, no jazz, no laughter, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. I tried to ignore it, focused back on my screen. Then I heard something, a muffled sound, like someone trying to cry quietly. The kind of crying where you're trying so hard to hold it and that every breath sounds painful. I froze, because I recognized that voice instantly. Chloe. My stomach tightened. I sat there for a long moment wondering what the right move was. Knock on her door, text her, pretend I didn't hear anything. Before I could decide, a loud slam echoed through the hallway, their apartment door. Then footsteps, heavy, angry, they stomped past my door toward the elevator. A second later, I heard the elevator ding. Then silence again. I stood up slowly, my mind racing. And that's when the knock came. 3 soft taps, so hesitant they almost didn't sound real. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole, and my heart nearly stopped. Chloe stood in the hallway looking like someone who had just run out of a burning building. Her hair was tangled, her face pale. Mascara streaked across her cheeks, and the fear in her eyes was something I had never seen before. I opened the door immediately. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice cracked halfway through my name. "I'm sorry to bother you." She swallowed hard, then said the words that changed everything. I don't know where else to go." Her fingers tightened around the strap of the small backpack on her shoulder. "Can I stay here tonight?" For a second 100 questions rushed into my head. What happened? Where's Derek? Did he hurt you? But looking at her standing there shaking in my doorway, I realized something important. Right now she didn't need questions. She needed safety. So I stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Come in." She hesitated for half a second, then crossed the threshold like someone escaping a storm. I closed the door behind her and turned the deadbolt. The small metallic click echoed through the apartment, and I saw her shoulders drop just a little, like that sound meant something. Like it was the first time all night she felt protected. I led her to the sofa. She sank into it slowly, staring down at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Her phone was clenched so tightly in her fingers her knuckles had turned white. "I'll grab you something warm," I said quietly. In the kitchen, my hands were shaking more than I expected. I found an old packet of hot cocoa mix shoved behind some expired tea bags. Boiled water. Stirred it slowly, trying to calm the anger starting to build in my chest. When I brought the mug back, Chloe wrapped both hands around it like she needed the heat to stay grounded. We sat there in silence. Not awkward silence, waiting silence, the kind where you let someone breathe before they start talking. After a few minutes she spoke. "Derek's been different lately." Her voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from somewhere far away. I nodded, letting her continue. "For months now, everything makes him angry." She stared down at the mug. "Work, money, the apartment." Then her voice cracked slightly. "Me." My jaw tightened. "He checks my phone now," she continued quietly. "Asks where I'm going, who I'm texting." She took a shaky breath. I kept telling myself it was stress. Then she looked up at me, eyes red and scared. "Tonight he threw my phone at the wall." The words landed heavy. Glass, anger, violence. I pictured it instantly, and something cold settled in my chest. "I grabbed my backpack and ran," she said. "I didn't even think about where I was going." Her eyes met mine. "I just knew your door was close." Something inside me hardened right then, a decision forming quietly. I leaned forward slightly. "You can stay here as long as you need," I told her, "not just tonight." For a moment she looked like she didn't believe me. Then she nodded slowly, and whispered something so soft I almost didn't hear it. "Thank you for not asking me to go back." That night after Chloe fell asleep in my bedroom, I stayed awake on the sofa, not watching TV, not reading, just listening. And sometime around 3 in the morning, I realized something that made sleep impossible. because protecting Chloe for one night was easy. But if Derek came back looking for her, this was only the beginning of a fight neither of us had planned for, and I had no idea yet how far I was willing to go to keep her safe. Ryan Cole had always believed that silence meant peace. That night proved how wrong I was. Chloe fell asleep in my bedroom sometime after 2 in the morning. I knew the exact moment because the apartment finally went completely still. No shifting sheets, no quiet footsteps, no sudden gasps that made me wonder if she was reliving something in a dream. Just steady breathing, the kind that only comes when someone finally feels safe enough to rest. I stayed on the sofa, not because the couch was comfortable. It was. My neck already ached from the angle and my legs hung halfway off the edge. But I couldn't bring myself to go to bed. Every small sound in the hallway made my ears sharpen. A neighbor's door closing, footsteps on the stairs, the elevator humming down the shaft. Each noise made my mind jump to the same question. What if Derek came back? What if he started knocking? What if he started shouting? The thought of Chloe hearing his voice through my door made something protective tighten in my chest. So around 3 in the morning, I got up quietly and checked the lock again. Deadbolt. Chain. Both secure. Then I grabbed the extra dining chair from the kitchen and set it near the front door. I sat there with my back against the wall, arms crossed, staring at the hallway through the peephole every few minutes like some kind of amateur night watchman. It was ridiculous and completely automatic, because once someone tells you they're afraid to go home, you don't ignore that. You guard the door. Morning came slowly. Seattle's gray light filtered through the blinds around 7, turning the apartment into that dim silver color the city wears most mornings. I must have drifted off for a while because the smell of coffee pulled me out of sleep. Real coffee, fresh, strong, not the stale, reheated stuff I usually drank. I blinked awake and stretched, my back protesting immediately. The chair beside the door scraped softly as I stood. For a moment I forgot why I had slept there. Then the bedroom door opened. Chloe stepped into the hallway carrying 2 mugs. She had changed into the oversized t-shirt and sweatpants I'd given her the night before. The clothes hung loosely on her, sleeves rolled twice just to free her hands. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes were still a little puffy, but she looked steadier, more like the Chloe I remembered. "You slept by the door," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. I rubbed the back of my neck. Old habit. She gave me a look that said she knew that was a lie, but she didn't call me out. Instead, she handed me one of the mugs. "Peace offering," she said. I took it, wrapping my hands around the warmth. "Smells like real coffee," I said. "Fresh ground," she replied. "You've been drinking the same bag for 3 weeks." I stared at her. "You checked my coffee." She shrugged slightly. "Designers notice details." That small piece of sarcasm felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. We moved to the kitchen table. Outside the window, the city was waking up, cars splashing through puddles, a bus rumbling past the corner. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and then stopped. Normal life continuing. Chloe sat across from me, staring into her mug. "Last night," she said slowly, "was the first night in months I didn't fall asleep wondering what mood Derek would wake up in." The sentence landed heavy. I set my mug down carefully. "How long has it been like that?" She took a breath before answering. "About a year." That surprised me. A year. She nodded. "It didn't start big." Her voice had that distant quality again. "Just little things. Comments about what I wore. Questions about who I texted. At first I thought he was joking." She let out a small, humorless laugh. "Then he started checking my phone." My jaw tightened. "He said couples shouldn't have secrets," she continued, "so I gave him the password." She paused. "Then he started asking why I liked certain photos on Instagram. Why male clients emailed me. Why I was freelancing instead of focusing on supporting his career." Each sentence made the picture clearer. "You started changing things," I guessed quietly. Her eyes lifted to mine. "Yes." She nodded once. "I stopped posting online. I turned down some design clients. I even stopped baking." Why baking? She smiled sadly. He said the smell was annoying. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Chloe reached into her backpack and pulled something out. A small metal set of measuring spoons. Old, dented, the edges worn smooth with years of use. These were my grandmother's, she said softly. I used them every weekend when I baked. She turned them in her hands. I haven't used them in months. The spoons clinked quietly against each other, a small sound, but it carried weight. You'll use them again, I said. She looked up. Yeah. Yeah. I nodded toward the kitchen. My oven works. That earned the first real smile of the morning. Not big, but genuine. We sat there for a while after that, just talking about practical things, about what came next. My cousin Hannah lives in Portland, Chloe explained. She said I can stay with her. That's good, I said. She even offered to help me get my stuff later. Smart. Chloe nodded slowly. I don't want anything that's ours, she said, just my clothes. My laptop. My design gear. And these. She lifted the measuring spoon slightly. I nodded. That's enough. Around 10, we decided to get some air. The apartment suddenly felt too small for everything we were thinking about. There's a cafe down the block, I told her. Best croissants in the neighborhood. She raised an eyebrow. You say that about every croissant. Because every croissant deserves encouragement. That earned another quiet laugh. The cafe was mostly empty. A few early laptop workers, a barista who looked half asleep. We took a corner table. Chloe ordered a latte. I grabbed black coffee. We talked about small things again. Safe things, her freelance projects. A logo she had designed for a Portland coffee shop months ago. A mural she wanted to paint someday. But halfway through her croissant, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. 2 minutes later it buzzed again, same number. Then a text appeared. Tell Chloe to call me. We need to talk. My stomach tightened. Derek. How he got my number I had no idea. But the tone was unmistakable. I locked the phone screen without replying. Chloe noticed. Everything okay? Yeah, I said quickly. Work stuff. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded, didn't press further, and I silently promised myself something. Derek would not ruin this morning. A few hours later, we were back at the apartment. Chloe packed her backpack again. I should catch the afternoon Greyhound, she said. Hannah's picking me up in Portland. I'll drive you to the station. You don't have to. I know. I grabbed my keys anyway. She didn't argue after that. The drive across Seattle was quiet. Rain misted across the windshield. Traffic moved slowly through downtown. Chloe stared out the passenger window most of the way, watching the city pass. When we reached the bus station, she turned toward me. Ryan. Yeah. Thank you. The words were simple, but the way she said them carried something deeper. I mean it, she added, for last night. For the door. For the coffee. For not asking me to explain everything right away. I shrugged slightly. That's what friends do. She studied my face. Yeah, she said softly. Then she leaned across the center console and hugged me, not desperate like the night before, stronger, steadier. When she pulled back, she smiled a little. If things get messy again. She hesitated. You'll pick up if I call. Always, I said without thinking. She nodded once, then stepped out of the car. I watched her walk into the station with the backpack over her shoulder, small but determined. When she disappeared through the doors, the passenger seat beside me suddenly felt very empty. Driving home, I kept thinking the same thing. For years I believed quiet meant peace. But when I opened my apartment door that afternoon and stepped back into that silent hallway, it didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like something important had just left, and I wasn't sure the quiet was something I wanted back. Ryan Cole thought the hardest part was over once Chloe left for Portland. I was wrong, because sometimes the real trouble doesn't show up until after the quiet returns. The first few days after she left felt strange. The apartment was exactly the way it had always been. Same scratched sofa, Same cluttered bookshelves, same silent evenings, but something about it had changed. Or maybe it was me. I'd catch myself pausing in the hallway outside my door, half expecting to hear just drifting through the wall from Chloe's apartment. Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, something warm and alive. Instead, there was nothing, just silence pressing against the drywall. Work kept me busy during the day. Numbers and spreadsheets still behaved exactly the way they were supposed to. Clients emailed, reports got filed, meetings came and went. But every evening when I came home and walked past the apartment next door, the empty quiet felt heavier. Then 3 days later, I ran into Derek. I had just stepped out of my apartment on my way to work when his door opened at the same time. He stood there looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot. Stubble shadowed his jaw. And even at 8 in the morning, I could smell stale whiskey hanging around him like a cloud. For a moment, we both just stood there in the hallway. Then he spoke. "Where is she?" No greeting, no small talk, just the question. My grip tightened around my car keys. "I don't know what you mean." He stepped closer. "Don't play dumb," he said quietly. "I know she came to you that night." My pulse picked up, but I kept my voice calm. "She's not here." That was the truth. He studied my face like he was searching for cracks. "You think you're helping her," he muttered. "I didn't say anything about helping anyone." "You didn't have to." His jaw tightened. "You've always been hanging around, waiting." That caught me off guard. Waiting for what? For her to realize she deserved better. The words carried more bitterness than anger. For a second I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered Chloe's voice the night she knocked on my door. "Ryan, if I go back there tonight, I think he might actually hurt me." Whatever sympathy I might have had disappeared. "She made her own choices," I said evenly. Derek's eyes darkened. "Did she tell you everything?" "I don't need details." He gave a humorless laugh. "Of course you don't." Then he leaned closer. "You think she's perfect, don't you?" I didn't answer, because the truth was simple. I didn't think Chloe was perfect, but I knew she deserved better than fear. Derek stared at me another moment, then he stepped aside. "Stay out of it," he muttered. I didn't respond, just walked past him toward the elevator. The doors slid shut between us a few seconds later, and I exhaled slowly. Inside my car, I pulled out my phone and sent Chloe a quick message. "Ran into Derek this morning. He's looking for you. Be careful." Her reply came a few minutes later. "I'm okay. Hannah's got my back." Short, simple. But it eased the knot in my chest. Life settled into a strange rhythm after that. Chloe and I texted every few days. Nothing heavy most of the time. Updates, small victories. She told me about starting therapy. "Turns out talking to someone helps more than pretending everything's fine," she wrote once. Another day she sent a photo of a coffee mug with a logo she had designed printed on the side. First real project since leaving Seattle. I saved the picture, not because it was an amazing design, though it was good, but because the pride in that message meant something. Weeks passed. Seattle's gray winter slowly softened toward spring. The silence in the apartment next door remained. Then about 2 weeks after Chloe left, she called me late one evening. "Hey," I answered. "Ron." Her voice sounded different, clearer, stronger. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, then she hesitated. "I'm coming back to Seattle next week." My heart skipped a beat. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," she said quickly. "Hannah's coming with me." "For what?" "To get my stuff." That made sense. "You want backup?" "Yes," she said immediately. Then she laughed softly. "Actually, I was hoping you'd say that." "When?" "Saturday morning." "I'll be ready." Saturday arrived with typical Seattle weather. Gray sky, light drizzle. I had barely finished my first cup of coffee when I heard the rumble of a truck outside. Looking through the blinds, I spotted it immediately. A small white SUV towing a U-Haul trailer. 2 women stepped out. Chloe climbed out of the passenger side first. For a moment I barely recognized her. Her hair was shorter now, cut just below her jawline. Her posture was different too, more grounded, more solid. Then the other woman stepped out, tall, sharp features, confident stance. That had to be Hannah. I grabbed my jacket and headed downstairs. Chloe spotted me first. Her face lit up with a smile that felt familiar again. "Hey," she said. "Hey." For a second neither of us moved. Then she stepped forward and hugged me. Not desperate, not fragile, just warm. Hannah walked over a moment later and extended her hand. "You must be Ryan," she said. "Thanks for helping her that night." "No problem," I replied. Her handshake was firm. Protective cousin energy radiated off her. "Let's get this done before he shows up," she added. Chloe nodded. We headed upstairs together. The door to Chloe's old apartment opened slowly. Inside, everything looked almost untouched. Minimal furniture, clean surfaces, but the place felt cold, like it had never really belonged to her. "Just my stuff," Chloe said. "Nothing that's ours." We worked quickly, clothes into suitcases, design equipment into boxes, personal things into smaller bags. At one point, Chloe opened a kitchen drawer and pulled something out, the measuring spoons, her grandmother's. She turned them in her hand thoughtfully. "You kept them," I said. "Of course," she replied softly. Then she placed them carefully into a box. Piece by piece, her life disappeared into cardboard. We were halfway through loading everything into the trailer when it happened. A car door slammed outside, heavy footsteps in the hallway, then the apartment door burst open. Derek stood in the doorway. His eyes moved quickly across the room. Boxes, suitcases, me, Hannah, Chloe. "What the hell is this?" Chloe straightened. "I'm getting my things." "You can't just." He stepped forward. Instinct took over. I moved between them. "Stop right there," I said. My voice stayed calm but firm. "We're almost done." Derek's attention shifted to me. "You're the one who put her up to this." "No," I said. "She decided on her own." His face reddened. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Before I could answer, Hannah lifted her phone. "Take one more step and I call the police." The room went still. Derek looked from the phone to Chloe. His anger shifted, changed shape. "Chloe," he said quietly, "just talk to me." 5 minutes. She stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "No." One word, simple, final. Derek's expression twisted. "You were never good enough for me anyway," he snapped. Chloe didn't flinch. Instead, she met his eyes calmly. "You're right." He blinked, then she finished. "I wasn't good enough for someone like you." The silence that followed felt heavy, but not frightening, just finished. We grabbed the final boxes and headed out. Derek didn't follow. He just stood there watching, like the fight had drained out of him. Outside, the rain had picked up slightly. We loaded the last box into the trailer. Chloe closed the door and turned to me. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for standing there." "You didn't need me," I replied. "Yes," she said, "I did." Hannah climbed into the driver's seat. Chloe paused beside the passenger door, then hugged me again, longer this time. "We'll talk soon," she said. "Drive safe." I watched as the SUV pulled away, the trailer rattling behind it. For a long time I stood there in the drizzle, watching the tail lights disappear around the corner, and something strange settled over me, because Chloe had walked away from Derek. But part of me realized something else. The next chapter of her life had just begun. The question was whether I was supposed to be part of it. Ryan Cole thought the hardest part was standing between Chloe and Derek in that apartment. But the real test came afterward. Because once someone leaves your life like that, the quiet that follows has a way of asking questions you've been avoiding. The week after Chloe went back to Portland felt longer than the entire winter before it. Nothing dramatic happened. No confrontations, no midnight phone calls, no chaos, just routine. The kind I had always claimed to like. I went to work, balanced ledgers, answered emails, attended meetings where people argued politely about numbers that didn't really matter outside a spreadsheet. Then I came home, walked down the hallway, and past the apartment next door, still empty, still silent. The landlord had already taped a small "for rent" sign on the door. Every time I walked by it, something inside me tightened. I used to think that silence was peace. Now it felt like an echo, like a reminder of something missing. Chloe and I kept in touch. At first it was daily. Simple texts, checking in, making sure she was okay. Then every few days, not because we cared less, because life was slowly moving forward. One evening she sent me a picture, a kitchen counter, flowers scattered across it, and right in the center of the photo sat the old measuring spoons, her grandmother's. "Guess what I'm doing tonight," the message said. I smiled, baking again. Another photo came through, chocolate chip cookies, slightly uneven, still cooling on a tray. "Hannah says they're the best thing I've made in months." That message stayed on my phone longer than it should have, because it wasn't about cookies. It was proof she was rebuilding something. Another week passed. Then another. Chloe started therapy. She told me about it during one of our late-night calls. "I didn't realize how many red flags I ignored," she admitted. "Love isn't supposed to feel like walking on eggshells." "No," I said quietly, "it's not." Some nights were easier than others. Once she called around midnight. "Bad dream," she said. "I woke up thinking I heard glass break again." I stayed on the phone with her for almost an hour. We didn't talk about Derek. We talked about random things, music, old high school memories. The time we both nearly failed chemistry because neither of us could figure out balancing equations. Eventually her breathing slowed. "I'm okay now," she said. "Good." Before hanging up, she said something that stuck with me. "You know what the therapist told me?" "What?" "That the opposite of fear isn't bravery." "What is it?" "Safety." The word lingered in my mind long after the call ended. Spring arrived slowly in Seattle. Cherry blossoms appeared along some streets. The rain softened. One evening I sat on the balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the city lights blur through the drizzle. For years I had treated my apartment like a fortress. Quiet, controlled, no surprises, but lately something had shifted. I started cooking more instead of ordering takeout. Burned a batch of homemade pasta the first time. The second attempt actually worked. I even started browsing animal adoption websites. One rescue dog kept appearing in my search results. A mutt named Max, floppy ears, big brown eyes. Thinking about adopting him, I texted Chloe one evening. Her reply came back almost immediately. "He looks like trouble. The good kind, though. Maybe he'd keep you from hiding in your apartment all the time." That message made me laugh, but it also made me realize something uncomfortable. She wasn't wrong. For years I had avoided relationships because they felt like noise. But the last few months had proven something different. Some people didn't bring chaos. Some people brought life. Then one night in early April, my phone buzzed at midnight. "Chloe, you awake?" I called her immediately. "Hey," I said, "hey." Her voice carried a mix of nerves and excitement. "I signed up for something today." "What kind of something?" "A design conference. In Seattle." What? My heart skipped slightly. "You're coming back." "Just for 3 days," she said. "Next month." "For the conference." Then she hesitated. "But I was hoping maybe we could get dinner while I'm there." I leaned back on the sofa, trying not to sound too eager. "I think I can clear my schedule." She laughed softly. "I was hoping you'd say that." We talked for another 20 minutes. Nothing heavy, just logistics. The conference hotel, dates, possible restaurants. When the call ended, I sat there staring at my phone, a slow smile creeping across my face. Because something about that conversation felt different. Not like two friends checking in. Like two people stepping towards something new. The weeks leading up to her visit passed quicker than expected. Then suddenly the day arrived. I got to the restaurant early, 15 minutes early, which is how you know someone matters. The Italian place sat near the waterfront, warm lights inside, the smell of garlic and fresh bread drifting through the doorway. I kept glancing at the entrance like an idiot, then she walked in. For a second the room seemed quieter. Chloe wore a simple blue dress, nothing flashy, but it suited her perfectly. Her hair had grown slightly longer since the move. Soft waves framing her face, and her expression looked lighter, not haunted, not guarded, just present. She spotted me and smiled, the real one, the one that reached her eyes. "Hi," she said. Hi. I stood up awkwardly, suddenly unsure what to do with my hands. We sat down, ordered food. Started with safe conversation, her conference sessions, my disastrous attempts at cooking, the rescue dog I was still considering adopting. Halfway through dinner something shifted. It happened quietly, in the way she looked at me across the table, like she was studying something carefully. After dessert arrived, she set her fork down. "Ryan," she said. "Yeah. I didn't come to Seattle just for the conference." I nodded slowly. I had a feeling. She took a breath. "I've spent the last few months working on myself. Therapy. Learning what healthy relationships actually look like." Her fingers traced the edge of the table. "That night when I knocked on your door, I was broken." "You weren't broken," I said gently. She smiled sadly. "I felt broken." Then her eyes met mine. But I didn't want to start something new just because I needed someone to save me. The honesty in her voice hit me harder than anything else she could have said. "I wanted to heal first," she continued. "So if I ever chose someone again, it would be because I wanted them, not because I needed them." The room seemed very quiet for a moment. Then I reached across the table, took her hand. It was warm, steady. "I'm glad you waited," I said. She squeezed my hand lightly. "So am I." Then she said something that made my heart race, because now I know exactly what I want. For a moment after Chloe said those words, neither of us moved. The restaurant around us kept humming with quiet conversation and clinking glasses, but the small space between our hands on the table felt like the center of the room, because what she had just said wasn't casual, it wasn't flirtation, it was a choice. "I know what I want," she repeated softly. My heart was beating harder than I expected. "Okay," I said. My voice came out calmer than I felt. "What do you want?" Chloe studied my face for a second like she was making sure I understood the weight of what came next. Then she smiled. "Dinner was step one." That made me laugh a little. "Step one of what?" She leaned forward slightly. "Of seeing if the person who opened his door for me that night was still the same guy months later." And her smile widened just a little. "He is." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just waited, because Chloe had always been someone who finished her thoughts when she was ready. "I spent a long time thinking love meant proving something," she continued. "Proving you were patient enough, loyal enough, understanding enough." Her thumb brushed lightly against the back of my hand. "But therapy helped me realize something." "What's that?" "That love shouldn't feel like surviving a storm." She held my gaze. "It should feel like coming home." The words settled somewhere deep in my chest, and suddenly every quiet night in my apartment made a little more sense. Every late phone call, every text about baking cookies or job updates, all of it had been building toward this moment. "I'm not asking you to fix anything," Chloe said carefully, "and I'm not looking for someone to rescue me." "I know," I said. "I can see that." She nodded. "Good." Then she took a breath. "But I would like to see where this goes." There it was, simple, honest, no pressure, just an open door. I squeezed her hand gently. "I've been waiting for you to say that." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You have?" "Yeah." I shrugged. "I just didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything because of that night." Her expression softened. "That night wasn't a debt, Ryan. It was kindness." She leaned back slightly, studying me again. "And kindness isn't something people forget." Dinner ended slowly after that, not rushed, not awkward. Just easy conversation and quiet smiles that kept sneaking across both our faces. When we stepped outside the restaurant, the Seattle night air felt cool and fresh. The waterfront lights reflected across the dark water. Somewhere down the pier, a street musician played soft guitar. Neither of us seemed in a hurry to leave. "Walk?" Chloe asked. "Yeah." We moved along the waterfront slowly, talking about small things, the conference sessions she was excited about, the design agency she had started working with in Portland, the possibility of her eventually taking on more freelance clients again. At one point she nudged my shoulder lightly. "So, did you adopt the dog?" "Not yet." "Why not?" "I was waiting." "For what?" "For proof I could handle sharing space again." What? She stopped walking and looked at me. "You mean emotionally?" "Something like that." She smiled. "You're getting there." We eventually ended up in a small park overlooking the skyline. The Ferris wheel turned slowly in the distance. Chloe leaned against the railing, looking out at the lights. "I used to think the worst thing in the world was being alone," she said quietly. "And now I know the worst thing is being with someone who makes you feel alone." The breeze moved gently through her hair. Then she turned toward me, her eyes soft but steady. "Kiss me." She said it simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and maybe it was. I stepped closer, placed one hand lightly at her waist. The kiss started gentle, careful, like we were both testing the moment. But there was no hesitation in it, no uncertainty, just warmth. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead lightly against mine. "That felt right," she whispered. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It did." We walked her back to the hotel after that. Neither of us said much during those final blocks. Some things didn't need words. At the entrance she paused, holding the keycard between her fingers. "Stay?" she asked. I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" She smiled softly. "For the same reason I knocked on your door that night." "Safety." She nodded, "but this time because I want it." That difference mattered. Inside the hotel room, the city lights glowed softly through the curtains. She changed into comfortable clothes while I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed. When she climbed under the blanket, she looked more peaceful than I had ever seen her. I slid in beside her, not rushing, not pushing anything further, just lying there quietly. Her hand found mine in the dark, and this time there were no sudden flinches, no tense breathing, just calm. After a few minutes, her breathing slowed into sleep. I stayed awake a little longer, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The midnight knock, the broken phone, the quiet months of healing. And the choice she had made tonight. Love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up quietly, at the end of a long road, in the middle of healing, choosing you not because it has to, but because it wants to. And sometimes the most important thing you can do in life is open the door when someone knocks, because the right person might come back later, not broken, not afraid, but ready. And that changes everything.